15. Florence Lawrence, 1886–1938. In the early days of cinema, actors were often uncredited, known only by the studios that employed them. Florence Lawrence holds the distinction of being the very first movie star to break this anonymity. Yet her final years and her death remained shrouded in tragedy and obscurity for decades. Born in Hamilton, Ontario in 1886, Lawrence began her career on the stage before transitioning to the silent screen. She was initially known simply as the Biograph Girl, a title that garnered her immense fame without the recognition of her actual name. Her achievements in the silent era were foundational. She appeared in nearly 300 films, becoming the first performer to be named publicly by a studio as a marketing strategy. This move by Independent Moving Pictures in 1910 changed the trajectory of the film industry, birthing the star system that defines Hollywood today. Lawrence was wealthy, beloved, and innovative. She even designed the first mechanical turn signal for automobiles, though she never patented it. However, her decline was as precipitous as her rise. A studio fire in 1915 left her with burns and a fracture that caused chronic pain, leading to a silence in her career just as the industry was evolving. By the 1930s, the wealth she had accrued was decimated by the stock market crash of 1929. Reduced to working as an extra in films where she once would have been the headliner, Lawrence struggled with a debilitating bone marrow disease and profound depression. Her death on December 28, 1938 was a quiet, desperate act. Alone in her Beverly Hills apartment, she consumed a lethal mixture of and syrup. It was a grim end for the woman who had essentially invented the concept of celebrity. For years, the circumstances of her death were whispered about but rarely discussed openly, overshadowed by the glitz of the golden age she helped create. For over 50 years, Florence Lawrence lay in a grave that bore no marker. She was interred at the Hollywood Memorial Park Cemetery, now known as Hollywood Forever, in a plot paid for by the Motion Picture Relief Fund. It was a stark contrast to the adulation she received in life. The forbidden secret here was not a scandal of vice, but the industry's cold erasure of its own history. The first movie star was buried in anonymity, her resting place lost to the weeds of time. It was not until 1991 that an anonymous British actor, later revealed to be Roddy McDowall, paid for a marker. The headstone now reads, "The Biograph Girl, the first movie star." It sits in a quiet section of the cemetery, a sober reminder of how quickly Hollywood can forget its pioneers. 14. Bobby Driscoll, 1937–1968. The narrative of the child star chewed up and spat out by the studio system is a recurring tragedy in Hollywood, but few stories are as harrowing as that of Bobby Driscoll. Born in 1937, Driscoll was the golden boy of the Walt Disney Company in the 1940s and early 1950s. He was the first actor to be put under a long-term contract by Disney, starring in Song of the South and Treasure Island. His most enduring achievement, however, was serving as the voice and animation model for the title character in the 1953 classic Peter Pan. He received a Juvenile Academy Award in 1950, cementing his status as a top-tier talent. The secret that unraveled his life began with puberty. As Driscoll aged, his face lost the cherubic softness that Disney required. In 1953, abruptly and without ceremony, his contract was terminated. The rejection was total. He was cast aside not for a lack of talent, but for the biological inevitability of growing up. This abandonment led to a spiral into heroin addiction and criminal behavior. By the time he was a young adult, his record of arrests had made him unemployable in the industry that had once idolized him. Driscoll disappeared into the counterculture of New York City's East Village in the mid-60s. He vanished from the public eye so completely that his death went unnoticed for over a year. On March 30, 1968, two children playing in an abandoned East Village tenement found his body on a cot surrounded by religious pamphlets and empty beer bottles. The medical examiner determined the cause of death was heart failure caused by advanced hardening of the arteries, a side effect of his long-term heroin use. He was 31 years old. Because he carried no identification and his body was unclaimed, Bobby Driscoll was buried in a pauper's grave in New York City's Potter's Field on Hart Island. It was a mass grave. indistinguishable from thousands of others. The forbidden nature of his death lies in the timeline. The public and even his own mother did not know he was dead. It was not until late 1969, when his mother sought Disney's help to locate him for a reunion, that a fingerprint match revealed the grim truth. The voice of Peter Pan, the boy who wouldn't grow up, lies in a desolate, inaccessible trench on an island off the Bronx, far from the magic of Hollywood. His name appears on a cenotaph at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills, but his physical remains are lost in the anonymity of the system that failed him. 13. Karl Alfalfa, Switzer, 1927–1959. Generations of audiences know Karl Switzer as the cowlick-sporting, off-key singing Alfalfa from the Our Gang, also known as the Little Rascals, comedies. Born in 1927, Switzer's comedic timing and distinct look made him one of the most recognizable child actors of the 1930s. He appeared in dozens of shorts, becoming a pop culture icon. However, like many of his peers, transitioning to adult roles proved difficult. While he managed to secure small parts in major films like It's a Wonderful Life and The Defiant Ones, he never regained his former status. Switzer's adult life was volatile. He developed a reputation for being difficult on set and struggled with money. By the late 1950s, he was working odd jobs, including bartending and hunting guide services. The circumstances leading to his death in 1959 involve a bizarre dispute over a hunting dog. Switzer had agreed to train a dog for a friend, Moses Stilts. When the dog ran off, Switzer offered a reward for its return. A man found the dog, and Switzer paid him $35 and bought him $15 worth of drinks. Switzer then decided that Stilts should reimburse him the $50. On the night of January 21, 1959, Switzer and a friend went to Stilts's home in Mission Hills to collect the money. A drunken argument ensued. According to Stilts, Switzer brandished a knife and threatened him, crying out, "I'm going to kill you!" Stilts fired a .38 caliber revolver, striking Switzer in the groin. The bullet severed a major artery, and the 31-year-old actor bled to death before help could arrive. The death was ruled justifiable homicide at the inquest, with the jury believing Stilts acted in self-defense. However, decades later, the witness who was with Switzer changed his story, claiming Switzer did not have a knife when he was shot, suggesting the killing was essentially murder. This revised account adds a layer of dark secrecy to the event, implying a cover-up protected by the self-defense narrative. Karl Switzer is buried at Hollywood Forever Cemetery. His grave is located in Section 6, near the edge of the property. The headstone bears his name, his dates, and significantly, the image of a hunting dog. Above his name are the Masonic square and compasses. Visitors often leave coins or small mementos, but the stone itself gives no hint of the violent, controversial nature of his death, nor the lingering questions about whether justice was truly served for the boy who made the world laugh. 12. Albert Dekker, 1905–1968. Albert Dekker was a character actor of immense intensity, known for his roles in films like Dr. Cyclops, The Killers, and Kiss Me Deadly. Born in 1905, Dekker was not just an actor, he was also a politician, serving a term in the California State Assembly in the 1940s. He was a man of intellect and presence, respected for his craft on stage and screen. However, the discovery of his body on May 5, 1968, revealed a secret life that shocked the conservative Hollywood establishment. Dekker was found in the bathroom of his Hollywood apartment by his fiancée. The scene was grotesque and baffling. He was found kneeling in the bathtub, hanging from the shower curtain rod. He was bound with leather handcuffs and complex knots, blindfolded, and gagged with a ball. His body was covered in explicit words written in red lipstick. Initially, the sheer complexity of the bindings led investigators to suspect murder. It seemed impossible for one man to restrain himself in such a manner. However, the coroner eventually ruled the death accidental, the result of autoerotic asphyxiation, a dangerous sexual practice involving the restriction of oxygen to the brain for heightened pleasure. The presence of the lingerie and the writings pointed toward a private, hidden life that Dekker had kept meticulously separated from his public persona as a serious actor and statesman. The forbidden aspect of this case lies in the silence that followed. The industry and the press, uncomfortable with the details, largely buried the story. It was a scandal that didn't fit the narrative of a tragic suicide or a glamorous murder. It was something darker and more taboo. Decker was cremated, and his remains were interred at the Garden State Crematory in North Bergen, New Jersey. There is no grand Hollywood monument for him. The specific niche or location of his ashes is not a site of pilgrimage for fans, perhaps due to the discomfort surrounding his death. His legacy is often defined by the Dr. Cyclops role, but for those who know the history of Hollywood tragedies, his name evokes the bizarre and lonely circumstances of his final moments. A secret life exposed only in death. 11. George Reeves, 1914–1959. George Reeves was the first true superhero of the television age. Born in 1914, his portrayal of Superman in the 1950s TV series Adventures of Superman made him an idol to millions of children. Before donning the cape, he had a respectable film career, including a role in Gone with the Wind. He was handsome, athletic, and seemingly invincible. But behind the scenes, Reeves felt trapped by the role. He was typecast, unable to find serious work outside of the Superman persona. On June 16, 1959, days before he was scheduled to marry socialite Leonore Lemon, Reeves was found dead in his bedroom from a gunshot wound to the head. The official ruling was suicide, attributed to depression over his stalled career. However, the forbidden secret surrounding Reeves is the persistent belief that he was murdered. Reeves had been involved in a long-term affair with Toni Mannix, the wife of Eddie Mannix, a powerful and feared executive at MGM known as the Fixer. Eddie Mannix had deep connections to the mob and a reputation for making problems disappear. Reeves had recently broken off the affair with Toni to be with Leonore, a move that allegedly enraged both Toni and potentially her husband. Anomalies at the crime scene fueled the murder theories. No fingerprints were found on the gun, despite it lying between his feet. The bullet casing was found underneath his body, a difficult position if he had shot himself while sitting on the edge of the bed. Furthermore, bullet holes were found in the floor and ceiling of the bedroom, which the guests in the house attributed to an earlier argument, but which added to the chaotic picture of that night. George Reeves was cremated, and his ashes are interred at Mountain View Cemetery in Altadena, California. They reside in the Pasadena Mausoleum in the Sunrise Corridor. The urn is marked with a simple plaque that reads, "My beloved son, Superman, George Besselo Reeves." For years, the grave has been a site of contention between those who accept the tragedy of a depressed actor and those who believe a dark Hollywood conspiracy silenced the Man of Steel. 10. Thelma Todd, 1906–1935. Thelma Todd, known as the Ice Cream Blonde, was one of the premier comedic actresses of the early 1930s. Born in 1906, she starred alongside the Marx Brothers and Buster Keaton and had a successful series of shorts with Zasu Pitts and later Patsy Kelly. She was vibrant, intelligent, and a shrewd businesswoman who opened a successful seaside cafe, Thelma Todd's Sidewalk Cafe, in Pacific Palisades. Her death remains one of Hollywood's most enduring forbidden mysteries. On the morning of December 16, 1935, she was found dead in her car inside the garage of her lover and business partner, Roland West. The car engine was not running, but the cause of death was determined to be carbon monoxide poisoning. The secrets surrounding her death are numerous. Todd had been seen in an altercation with her ex-husband, Pat DiCicco, a man with known mob ties, at a party the night before. There were rumors that Lucky Luciano, the infamous gangster, was pressuring Todd to let him use her cafe for illegal gambling operations and that she had refused. The autopsy revealed she had a broken nose and bruising around her throat, injuries that were difficult to explain as self-inflicted or accidental in a simple suicide scenario. The official story was that she had been locked out of her house, kicked the door, explaining the broken toe she also had, and went to the garage to warm up in the car, where she accidentally succumbed to the fumes. But the car was found with a full tank of gas, and the garage door was closed. The timeline of her death was also contested by witnesses who claimed to see her alive after the coroner's estimated time of death. Thelma Todd's body was cremated. Her remains were placed in her mother's casket after her mother died in 1969. They are buried in Bellevue Cemetery in her hometown of Lawrence, Massachusetts. There is no flashy Hollywood grave for Thelma Todd. She rests quietly in New England. However, the mystery of her death, whether it was a mob hit, a jealous lover's rage, or a tragic accident, remains a dark stain on the history of the 1930s studio era. 9. Bob Crane, 1928-1978. Bob Crane was the charming, wholesome-looking star of the hit sitcom Hogan's Heroes. Born in 1928, he was a talented drummer and radio personality before finding fame as Colonel Hogan. To the public, he was the all-American nice guy. The secret life of Bob Crane was one of the most shocking revelations of the 1970s. Crane was obsessed with sex and technology. He began documenting his numerous sexual encounters with women using the primitive video equipment available at the time. He was often accompanied by a friend, John Carpenter, a video equipment salesman. Together, they trolled bars and clubs, living a lifestyle of excess that was completely at odds with Crane's family man image. On June 29, 1978, Crane was found bludgeoned to death in his apartment in Scottsdale, Arizona, where he was performing in a dinner theater production. He had been beaten with a camera tripod, and an electrical cord was tied around his neck. The brutality of the murder suggested deep rage. The investigation quickly focused on John Carpenter. Police theorized that Crane wanted to end their friendship and the lifestyle they shared, and Carpenter reacted with lethal violence. However, due to a lack of DNA technology at the time and mishandling of the crime scene, Carpenter was not charged until 1992. He was acquitted in 1994 due to insufficient evidence. The murder remains officially unsolved. Bob Crane is buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles. He is interred in the columbarium alongside his second wife, Sigrid Valdis, who played Hilda on Hogan's Heroes. The grave marker is modest, giving no hint of the sordid double life that led to his gruesome end. The existence of his sex tapes and the unsolved nature of his murder transformed his legacy from that of a beloved sitcom star to a cautionary tale of addiction and the dark underbelly of celebrity. 8. William Desmond Taylor, 1872–1922. William Desmond Taylor was a top director at Paramount Pictures in the silent era, a man of sophistication and authority. Born in 1872, he directed major stars like Mary Pickford and was considered a pillar of the Hollywood community. His murder on February 1, 1922, is the original Hollywood scandal. Taylor was found shot to death in his bungalow. The investigation peeled back layers of a life filled with forbidden secrets. It was revealed that William Desmond Taylor was an invented identity. He was actually William Cunningham Dean Tanner, an Anglo-Irish antique dealer who had abandoned his wife and child in New York years earlier to start a new life in the West. The suspect list was a who's who of Hollywood. It included the comedian Mabel Normand, who was the last person to see him alive and was struggling with a cocaine addiction that Taylor was trying to help her break. It also included the young starlet Mary Miles Minter, who was infatuated with the much older Taylor. Her mother, Charlotte Shelby, was a controlling stage mother who owned a .38 caliber, the same caliber used to kill Taylor, and had threatened him for ruining her daughter. The studios, terrified of the scandal, reportedly rushed to the crime scene before the police, removing incriminating letters and lingerie found in Taylor's home. This cleaning of the scene essentially destroyed any chance of solving the crime. The press went into a frenzy, revealing the drug use and hedonism of the film colony, leading to the creation of the Hays Code to censor movies. Taylor is interred in the Cathedral Mausoleum at Hollywood Forever Cemetery. He rests in a niche, number 804. The inscription reads, "In memory of William C. Dean Tanner, acknowledging his true identity in death." The murder remains unsolved, a cold case that exposed the fragile constructed reality of Hollywood's elite. 7. Sharon Tate, 1943–1969. Sharon Tate was the embodiment of the 1960s zeitgeist, beautiful, talented, and on the verge of superstardom. Born in 1943, she starred in Valley of the Dolls and was married to director Roman Polanski. She was 8.5 months pregnant in the summer of 1969. The forbidden secret here is not one of Tate's doing, but of the culture that destroyed her. Her death on August 9, 1969, was the result of a collision between Hollywood glamour and the dark apocalyptic vision of Charles Manson. The Manson family murders were not just crimes, they were a ritualistic attempt to start a race war. Tate and 4 others were butchered in her home on Cielo Drive. The brutality of the event is difficult to overstate. Tate begged for the life of her unborn child, but was stabbed 16 times. The killers wrote the word pig in her blood on the front door. For a brief time before the Manson family was caught, a wave of paranoia swept through Hollywood. Friends turned on friends, believing the killer was someone within their inner circle. The secrecy and fear that gripped the industry marked the symbolic death of the peace and love era. Sharon Tate is buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City. She lies in the St. Anne's section. Her grave is heartbreaking. She is buried with her unborn son, who is named Paul Richard Polanski, on the marker. The grave is often adorned with fresh flowers and toys. It stands as a monument to lost potential and the moment when the innocence of a generation was violently extinguished. 6. Natalie Wood, 1938-1981. Natalie Wood was Hollywood royalty. A child star in Miracle on 34th Street and a legend in Rebel Without a Cause and West Side Story, she grew up on camera. Born in 1938, she was nominated for 3 Academy Awards before the age of 25. Her death is one of the most debated events in Hollywood history. On Thanksgiving weekend in 1981, Wood was on a yacht trip to Santa Catalina Island with her husband, Robert Wagner, and her co-star, Christopher Walken. On the night of November 29th, she disappeared from the boat. Her body was found the next morning floating in a cove, wearing a flannel nightgown, socks, and a down jacket. The original ruling was accidental drowning. The theory was that she had slipped while trying to secure a dinghy that was banging against the hull. However, Wood had a lifelong, terrifying fear of deep water, a forbidden secret phobia known to her intimates, making it highly unlikely she would go out on the dark water alone. Over the years, the story darkened. The captain of the boat, Dennis Davern, later claimed that Wagner and Wood had a vicious, glass-breaking argument right before she disappeared, allegedly over her relationship with Walken. In 2011, the investigation was reopened. In 2012, the coroner changed the cause of death from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors, citing bruising on her body that might have occurred before she entered the water. Robert Wagner was named a person of interest in 2018, though he has denied any involvement. Natalie Wood rests at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery. Her grave is located in the center of the lawn, a modest plot often covered in pennies left by fans, a reference to her role in Gypsy, or perhaps just a token of luck she didn't have that night. The unanswered question of how a woman terrified of water ended up drowning alone while 2 men sat nearby remains a haunting secret. 5. Brittany Murphy, 1977-2009. Brittany Murphy was a bubbling, infectious energy in films like Clueless, 8 Mile, and King of the Hill. Born in 1977, she had a unique charm that endeared her to audiences. Her death on December 20, 2009, at the age of 32, was initially attributed to pneumonia, anemia, and multiple drug intoxication, prescription and over-the-counter cold medications. It seemed like a tragic, accidental overdose, or a case of a star pushing herself too hard. The mystery deepened and turned forbidden 5 months later when her husband, Simon Monjack, died in the same house, in the same bedroom, of the exact same causes: pneumonia and anemia. The coincidence was staggering. Rumors began to swirl about toxic black mold in their Hollywood Hills home, killing them both, a theory the coroner initially dismissed, but which Murphy's mother later supported. Even darker theories emerged involving Murphy's father, Angelo Bertolotti, who commissioned independent toxicology tests years later. He claimed the results showed high levels of heavy metals in her hair, suggesting rat poison or arsenic, and alleged she was murdered. These claims were disputed by the coroner, but the cloud of suspicion never lifted. Was it a toxic house? Was it a controlling husband who then succumbed to his own neglect? Or was it something more sinister? Brittany Murphy is buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills. Her grave is in the Bright Eternity section. It is a peaceful, sweeping lawn, a sharp contrast to the chaotic and confusing reports that emerged from the bathroom where she collapsed. Her death represents a modern Hollywood tragedy where the truth seems buried under layers of tabloids and conflicting forensic reports. 4. Bela Lugosi, 1882–1956. Bela Lugosi is the eternal Dracula. Born in 1882 in present-day Romania, he brought an authentic, aristocratic menace to the 1931 classic film. He became the face of horror. But Lugosi's life held a secret pain. He was typecast so severely that he could not find work outside the horror genre, and even then he was paid a fraction of what his peers earned. To manage the chronic pain from severe sciatica, leg nerve pain, Lugosi became addicted to morphine and methadone. This addiction was a closely guarded secret for years until he bravely checked himself into a rehabilitation center in the 1950s, one of the first stars to do so publicly. He died on August 16, 1956, of a heart attack. He was destitute. Frank Sinatra allegedly paid for his funeral expenses. The most famous secret regarding his burial is true. Bela Lugosi was buried wearing his full Dracula costume, including the black cape. It was not his request, but rather a decision by his son and fourth wife, who felt it was what he and his fans would have wanted. Lugosi rests at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City. His grave is in the grotto section, a modest flat marker that simply says, "Beloved Father." For decades, the location of the grave was a pilgrimage site for goths and horror fans. But the image of the man trapped in the role that made him famous, even in death, speaks to the consuming nature of the Hollywood machine. 3. Marilyn Monroe, 1926–1962. Marilyn Monroe is the ultimate icon. Born Norma Jean Mortensen in 1926, she transcended acting to become a symbol of beauty and vulnerability. Her achievements in Some Like It Hot and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes are legendary. Her death on August 4, 1962, is the most analyzed event in Hollywood history. Ruled a probable suicide by overdose, the circumstances are riddled with inconsistencies, the forbidden secrets of the highest order. The timeline of when her body changed multiple times. Her housekeeper was seen washing in the middle of the night. The darkest secrets involve her relationships with President John F. Kennedy and his brother, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. Rumors persist that Marilyn possessed a little red diary containing state secrets or proof of the affairs, and that she was threatening to go public. Was she silenced by the CIA, the Mafia, the Kennedys themselves, or was she simply a woman in pain who made a fatal mistake? The disappearance of her internal organs' tissue samples during the autopsy process only fueled the conspiracy fires. Marilyn Monroe is interred at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery. She lies in the Corridor of Memories, crypt number 24. It is a wall crypt, arguably the most visited grave in the world. The marble facing of her crypt is often stained pink from the lipstick kisses of fans despite the cemetery's efforts to keep it clean. Even in death, she is touched, observed, and obsessively loved, her final secrets locked behind a slab of pink marble. 2. Elizabeth Short, 1924–1947. Elizabeth Short is better known by the name the press gave her, the Black Dahlia. Born in 1924, she was an aspiring actress who came to Hollywood with dreams of stardom. She never appeared in a film during her life. Her fame came exclusively from her death, which stands as the most gruesome and famous unsolved murder in California history. On January 15, 1947, her body was found in a vacant lot in Leimert Park. The brutality was absolute. She had been bisected at the waist, drained of blood, and her face was slashed from the corners of her mouth to her ears. The forbidden secret here is the identity of the killer and the cover-up that likely followed. Suspects ranged from doctors, due to the precision of the cuts, to surrealists like Man Ray, to powerful figures like George Hodel. Hodel, a physician, was a prime suspect whose own son later became a homicide detective and wrote a book accusing him. The files suggest corruption within the LAPD may have protected the killer. The sheer horror of the crime revealed a dark, sadistic undercurrent in post-war Los Angeles that shattered the glossy image of the city. Elizabeth Short is buried in Mountain View Cemetery in Oakland, California. Not in Los Angeles, the city that destroyed her. Her grave is in the plot of the sisters. The headstone is simple, reading, Elizabeth Short, daughter, 1924-1947. It is a quiet, leafy place, far removed from the noir nightmare of her death. She is the ultimate symbol of the Hollywood dream turned into a horror story. 1. Rudolph Valentino, 1895-1926. Before Elvis, before the Beatles, there was Rudolph Valentino. Born in 1895, the Italian actor was the screen's first Latin lover. He caused riots when he appeared in public. His films like The Sheik defined the silent era's concept of romance. His death in 1926 at the age of 31 from peritonitis after a perforated ulcer caused mass hysteria. Fans committed suicide. Over 100,000 people lined the streets for his funeral. The forbidden secret of Valentino lies in the mysteries of his personal life and the immediate aftermath of his death. Rumors of his sexuality were rampant and viciously suppressed by the studios. But the strangest secret is the Lady in Black. For decades after his death, a mysterious veiled woman would appear at his crypt on the anniversary of his death, leaving a single red rose. Was she a secret lover? A publicity stunt? Her identity was claimed by many but never definitively proven, adding a layer of gothic romance to his memory. Furthermore, there are persistent rumors that Valentino was poisoned by a jealous rival or a spurned lover, though medical evidence supports the ulcer. Valentino is interred at Hollywood Forever Cemetery in the Cathedral Mausoleum, crypt number 1205. Interestingly, he does not own the crypt. He was supposed to have a grand memorial, but he died in debt. His friend June Mathis lent him the crypt temporarily. She died shortly after, and they have remained there together ever since. The stained glass nearby is often said to feature a mysterious smudge that cannot be cleaned, said to be the spirit of the lover himself. He is the original Hollywood ghost, the first to show that immortality in film comes at a terrible mortal price.